So we've spoken about Bluepoint in the last few videos on this channel, and it's still quite shocking that Sony decided to shut down this studio, but we have got some new news about Bluepoint Studios, and it doesn't really get any better, especially for massive fans of Bloodborne. I know we criticize Sony for not making these sort of games or making the remakes that we want, but the reason why we haven't got a Bloodborne remake was actually From Software blocked it rather than actually Sony. So we're going to talk about a bit more about what happened around Bluepoint games, but also this Bloodborne remake that got turned down from Software. So if you like to see daily news, make sure you hit the like button. We do have a main channel, Love Gaming Neutro, where we live stream and reviews, gameplays, all of that. So you might want to follow that channel. So for years, we obviously know that everyone's been asking for a freaking Bloodborne remake. I always thought it was on Sony's part. Why wouldn't you want to do this? But it actually made sense to Sony that they wanted to do this. A remake of the PS4 classic Bloodborne was actually pitched to Sony by the now shuttered studio Bluepoint Games, and it was actually accepted because the numbers made sense. A new Bloomberg reported revealed.
Oh, come on!
My gosh, it actually got greenlit from Sony. One of the best studios for remakes, Bluepoint Games, were going to work on a Bloodborne remake. This is crazy. This is what probably could have saved this studio if they made this, and this made a shitload of money. The remake never entered production because From Software, the original developer on PS4, didn't want it to happen. So Sony holds the rights to Bloodborne, but it was From Software that made it in a collaboration with the platform holder. Apparently, the idea of Bloodborne remake from Bluepoint Games was pitched by the studios multiple times, and the idea had been strongly considered at one point, was even expected within Bluepoint, but never entered production. And it just makes you think, we've always complained for years that Sony or studios don't actually listen to their fan base. You look at Ben's studio, what does everyone want? A Days Gone 2. No, we don't get that. We were going to get a live service game. It actually looked like they were pushing for this because they knew people wanted this, and they were the best studio to actually make this happen. We saw what they did with Demon's Souls. What an incredible game. As a launch title for the PS5. That didn't even enter production. This would have been absolutely perfect. So what they did say is that they reported that Bluepoint Games also pitched an updated version of Shadow of the Colossus remake. Personally, it's on the PS4. I get it. It would have been even better on the PS5. I feel like that's something you've already done for the PS4. Something else would have been better. So Sony turned that down, which I personally understand. Bluepoint Games then pitched to other PlayStation studios on developing new projects in other franchises, such as a spin-off Ghost of Tsushima, but nothing was greenlit. It's actually nuts when you think about it that they were going to other PlayStation studios and we were like, is there anything that we can do? Ghost of Tsushima spin-off, we can do it. And it didn't look like they got anywhere with that. It goes on to say that they spent years working on a live service God of War game, which ultimately got cancelled in 2025. And it just makes you think, where did this idea come from? Was it because they were a support studio for God of War Ragnarok and they thought, we can do this? We actually have got an update of what this project was going to look like. So this was going to see Atreus had fallen into Hades. A loose idea was for players to control different versions or aspects of Atreus as they battled through Greek hell, and to have some sort of cooperative gameplay and ongoing support. Although much of the game's design was in flux, the report states. The developer supposedly made little progress with the project and spent several years floundering. Wow. Even though I'm hearing this, it just sounds like the actual Hades game. If Atreus is going through Greek hell, it just seems very similar to that. It doesn't really seem quite enticing, to be honest, like a live service version on that. Maybe if it was a spin-off game, that's a different story, but to have a live service, I don't think it warrants the excitement to play something like that. So, according to sources, Sony no longer thought Bluepoint was equipped to make its own game and couldn't find a partnership that made sense. It was therefore shut down, with employees becoming uneasy when the God of War trilogy remake was announced without its involvement just a few weeks ago. Wow, this is absolutely crazy because I'm reading this and reacting to this as I'm reading it, but wow, it's so disappointing because it just feels like with Bluepoint Games is that it seemed like they were an incredible studio. Like what they did with these remakes, it just made me think that idea of that live service God of War game, it doesn't make any sense because they're not used to making a live service game. And to think a studio of like 77 people would have to make this live service game, go into the live service genre where it is so competitive and so many games get shut down. They haven't got the kind of manpower behind it to actually create content over the next 3 to 4, 5 years to support this game. It just makes me think, how did they even get there when personally, if even Sony should have been like, wow, you know what, you're not really equipped for a live service game. Maybe we should just stick to a remake. It's just hard to believe that no other PlayStation studio would have wanted to collaborate with them because of what they did with the Demon's Souls remake. You're telling me there's not an older game that they could have remade. You're telling me that there wasn't another spin-off that they could have done. They go from making all these great remakes. Sony buy them out. It feels like Sony don't give them the support to actually give them the creative freedom to do what they want, as opposed to doing something that they think Sony would want, because then they bought you, you're trying to cater to something that is out of your hands and out of your depth, and then all of a sudden you get freaking shut down. It's really disappointing, especially to know that they were pushing for a Bloodborne remake. It just makes you think, why were From Software wanted to block it? Is it something they wanted to do on their own in the future? Maybe. We don't really know. It could be the case, because it feels like they wouldn't just block that just for the sake of blocking it if they weren't going to do something in the future. Still doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, like this person, yep, I'm mad at From Software. This sounds like one of those pieces of news that probably been missing a lot of vital information and background because it would cause massive outrage. I've been seeing for a while, I didn't see Sony as being the obstacle. In spite of Miyazaki's past statements, the game is his baby and he's aware of how cherished it is among the fans. The world knows how us Bloodborne fans don't ever shut up about it. I don't think he's been averse to pursuing it at some point, but he's clearly has his hands in a few kitchens right now. And that's what I think as well in regards to Bloodborne. I think it's something that they're going to do in the future, but it's something they probably didn't want to give to someone else. It's a bit annoying. I don't know, something doesn't seem right. It like someone said, it just feels like, how do you buy a studio based off their reputation of making amazing remakes and potentially something that they could make their own IP, and then all of a sudden they find themselves trying to do a live service game that is, you know, you're playing as Atreus that falls into Hades, where it just seems very similar to Hades, the game. That is a beloved indie game. And obviously now you've got a Hades 2. It just seems very, very similar to that. It was going to be a live service. It just makes me think there was absolutely nothing that they thought they could do. It's just very baffling. Something doesn't seem right, but from all those years with all those Bloodborne fans, you finally know that it wasn't actually Sony blocking a Bloodborne remake. It's actually From Software. It's good to know. People were going to comment under Sony, are we going to get a Bloodborne remake? At least we know in future states of play, we know that people are going to be like, Bloodborne remake, Bloodborne 2. We know it's not going to happen anytime soon. We actually know that if it's going to happen, or a remake or a Bloodborne 2, we actually know that it's going to be From Software that's going to be in control of it. But it just seems very baffling. I'm still mad. I'm still upset that Bluepoint got shut down. They were very talented studios. You don't just go and make quite a few remakes, become a support studio even to God of War Ragnarok. They had to waste years supporting that studio, Santa Monica. But here we are. At least we know about Bloodborne, and we know kind of a little bit more detail with that live service God of War game, which you played as Atreus, which, to be honest, it doesn't sound that good. I've said it for quite a while. Even with the next God of War, I wouldn't even say as much as I enjoyed playing as Atreus. I didn't mind playing as Atreus, but you play God of War for playing as Kratos. And even if Atreus is an older version, unless it's a spin-off game, I don't want them to go in the direction of you play as Atreus. It just wouldn't feel the same if you're playing as Atreus rather than Kratos. But what do you think about this news? What do you think about a Bloodborne remake? Do you think we're ever going to get that? Do you think From Software are going to do something with Bloodborne in the future? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let me know.